So each year, the administration brings forward a base budget for the board to start to consider. Now, this is really early in the preparation process. We'll spend the next 2 months talking about this. We'll be meeting with board members to review specific information. We'll be giving you a lot more detailed information. In addition, on Wednesday evening, Mr. Galetko and I will be presenting a budget forum in this same room at 7 p.m. And we'll go into a little bit more detail about certain funds and coding, and we'll just try to give a lot more detail. So tonight we're really giving you a broad overview of the district's budget request for next year. So have it up on the projector. The board also has this in front of them, and we'll go through this. This is pretty typical of what we've been using for the last 2 or 3 years. We start with talking about the district's mission statement to provide the best education possible for each and every student. And we look to sustain our efforts and work in all four areas: academics, arts, athletics, and activities. We do look to continuous improvement as our guiding philosophy. We do make sure that we align our work and align our requests with the district's strategic plan that was just passed for the beginning of the year in 2019 to 2025. So we'll go through each of these areas. Rob, are you ready to speak?
I think so. If anyone remembers my budget presentation last year, it was a cough-filled sneeze fest. But I think we're in.
But I'm ready to jump in just in case.
You're ready to jump in.
Yes.
Maybe this is good luck. I don't know. So welcome, everybody, to the 2021 budget season. Again, what Mrs. Albrecht and Dr. Steiner said, this is the first of many presentations that we will go through this spring. This is, in essence, a worst-case scenario. We have many variables to work out in the coming weeks, including staffing and final state and federal funding figures. So our 30,000-foot view of where the money comes from starts with our real estate taxes. We're heavily reliant on our local community to fund our schools. 65% of our budget of income is real estate taxes. The other 10% are other taxes collected locally: earned income tax, local service tax, real estate transfer tax, and delinquent tax. The other piece we get is mostly charge for services and interest income. So you could see 75% of our budget in Mount Lebanon comes from Mount Lebanon folks, not from somewhere else. So we're heavily reliant on those. 22% are state subsidies, and then federal grants only make up about 1% of our budget. Transitioning to expenditures. Again, the 30,000-foot view where the money's going. 78% of our budget is tied up in our people. We're a people-intensive business. We don't make widgets here. We're here to educate students. So 78% of that goes to our folks, their salaries and benefits. The other 11% is the debt on our beautiful buildings here and all the renovations that are done in all the other buildings around the district. 2% consumable supplies, 8% are some other services, including insurance, auditors, attorneys, and some bus contracting fees we pay, and some other contracts less than 1%. This is something that was established in Mount Lebanon that is a wonderful way to peel back the onion and see how we make budgeting decisions at Mount Lebanon School District. Our student-centered budgeting model keeps academics at the core of our decision-making. When reductions are needed, we make sure they come as far away from the classroom as possible, and that is described in this slide here.
And I think, Ms. Capucci, you, Jan, and I presented this at PSBA
years ago.
8 years ago or something like that. So this is something that seems to have resonated with the board in a conceptual framework of thinking about, where we put our money, and if we have to limit services or cut back on services, we try to make those as far away from the classroom as possible.
Certainly.
And when looking at the previous slide with the expenditures, it looks like the bulk of our expenditure is for teachers.
That's correct.
For people who are in the classroom with the kids.
That's 100% right.
So,
Yeah, tomorrow night we'll get into all the breakdowns of those salaries.
Night.
Wednesday night, I'm sorry. And we'll get into all those, and you'll see the amount that we spend on teachers. Our next slide are our issues for 2021. Of course, the limit of Act 1 index. Real estate taxes can only be increased at the board's will, and they can only be increased 2.6% or 0.64 mils. or equated to dollars $1.7 million. We're still fighting the PSERS crisis. It is, I wouldn't say it's fixed at all. There's been some progress in that regard. The rate is not increasing that much next year, 1.38% or 0.13 mils, or equated to dollars $268,000. The state budget is still uncertain. The preliminary governor's budget shows an increase of $105,000, but that budget relies heavily on charter school reform, so we probably won't account for that $105,000 going forward. And then, of course, this is the fourth of the
If we knew a legislator that should have any impact.
I'm looking at it, staring it down.
This is year 3 of the 4-year increase of our debt service payments. We remember from 17, some of the monies we received in a bond refinance. This is the structure of that tiering itself in over a 4-year period. So that increase is $432,000 or 0.16 mils. As Dr. Doyle over there knows, special education expenditures continue to rise, and we try to account for those the best we can. Our early enrollment projections for next year, an increase of less than 1%. We are seeing a small influx of kids, 50 or under each year. We do something called the cohort survival method, where we take into account Allegheny County birth rates and Mount Lebanon birth rates and estimate what our enrollment would be when those children turn 5, and that's what these projections show here. As we talked about people, 78% of our budget, this is our staffing allocation as it was in 2009 and what it is in the 2019-20 school year. Managing the number of employees results in fiscal responsibility. And I can tell you from other districts that I've been in, if you manage your people, you can manage your budget. And that's certainly been the case here in Mount Lebanon over the last 10 years. Although our enrollment has had a slight uptick, the staffing is still down. I will highlight the yellow area. Those figures used to be lumped into the clerical group, but we broke them out this year. So you'll see some slides from last year. They don't necessarily line up, but that's what that projection is.
If you see, our biggest increase has been in personal care assistants, and those are adults that we specifically assign, or their IEP indicates that they need somebody with them quite extensively. So that is one area that we've seen a significant increase in over the years. But in all other areas, we pretty much kept things status quo or gone down just a little bit. I did that so you could have a chance to get a drink.
That was great. This is a great segue there. A couple more to go, guys. The employee issues for 2021, again, we're heavily focused on people here. We have the PSERS rate increase, 1.38%, 0.13 mils or 268,000. We have a 3% healthcare increase, was actually our biggest increase over the last 5 years, but that equates to just over $275,000. Again, our index is limited to 0.64 mils or $1.7 million. Of course, we have contractual increases with all our bargaining unit groups that we go through, and this year we've only had 4 teacher retirements. As far as that was our number last year and this year, and I'm told that that's low for the last 10 years, so that's something we usually rely on as a savings that we don't have.
Can I jump?
If I can just ask you the question while you're on this
Sure.
slide. As I understand the very preliminary budget that we're looking at right now, everything on this slide is what's responsible for any increase you are looking at in the millage rate right now. We do not have any big new programs, any big new work on any of our schools, so that, I mean,
The only one,
there's not a lot
the one
of-
that's not on here is debt service, but Rob
And
mentioned
debt
that.
service.
a
But
minute ago.
but all of those things have to happen either contractually, or we have to pay our debts, and we have to pay our PSERS and healthcare. So there's not a lot of room to decrease any expenses for next year.
Well, the board could make decisions about programs. You could choose to reduce programs, and that would ultimately reduce
Right.
staffing. The board could make decisions about that.
Yeah.
Those are all in your realm of possibility.
Right, but what I'm saying, though, any increase that we
Yeah.
are seeing at this point
Correct.
is all due to things that we don't have any play in. they all have to happen. So if we were to do any decreases, they have to be within what's existing
Right.
in our programs and staffing right now.
Right.
Thank you, that's an excellent point.
Just to drill down a little bit more on what Mrs. Capucci referred to, looking at that second bullet point, healthcare increases 3% or $275,000 and change. Can I just imply that will drive another 0.14 or 0.15 mil increase?
Correct. I think I equated that at the beginning here. Let me check that. I'm trying to equate all.
About 0.1, I think.
Yeah, 0.1. Sounds about right. Then I think.
I don't think you could.
I don't put
figure
that.
out.
We'll have to figure that one
Well,
out.
Pacers is 0.13 at
So-
268,000.
Yep. So about 0.13 there then too.
Yeah.
Okay, and that is just something we are contractually obligated to
Certainly.
finance.
And if you look at the national trends, healthcare is anywhere from 10 to 15% out there in the for-profit market. So our participation in ACTIC is certainly a help to us.
So again, just piecing it together, we have increased debt service, we have PCERS increase, and as well, the healthcare increase.
That's correct.
And all the contractual obligations that the board has made
Yeah,
for teachers and administrators and support staff, so you do have those.
This is our PSERS increase over time. I want to do an in-depth slide on this on Wednesday night, but just over the last 10 years, we've jumped essentially 30% for PSERS retirement. And if that money wasn't being contributed by the school districts to people that retired today, probably wouldn't be receiving a pension. And it must be said always that, we've always contributed the employee's share. So the employees are paying their part, however, we're still addressing this pension issue.
I went on the PSERS website, I was looking at some background information. So 75% of what we are paying now for PSERS is going toward the unfunded liability that has been happening since 2005. So that's why all the jumps are happening. It is still underfunded, but it's getting better. And if you would like two fun facts, the oldest person currently getting PSERS is 109 years old. And the person currently working with the most years of service has been working for 62 years. Those are
Very nice.
pretty amazing.
I have to add that for Wednesday. I gotta steal that sheet.
PSERS website,
I
there's all
like
kinds
it.
of fun
I like
stuff.
it. Again, here's our healthcare cost again, 3% increase, $275,000. The average increase since 2015 has been 2.24%. Again, compare that to the private sector, we are in a really good place. Our employee groups in their union contracts also pay a percent of the premium, anywhere between 10.5% and 11.5% in those employee groups, so they're paying their fair share as well. This is to look at our millage history for the last 10 years, the outlier being the high school bond, and then the reassessment year, which we call revenue neutral year. The average over the last 10 years has been 0.55 increase, or 2.29%. And 8 of the last 10 years, the board has increased taxes. Some of the things that are happening right now, definitely reaping the benefits of a better economy. The earned income tax are slightly above projections. Realty transfer tax, the last few years has been great. The tuition for international students and our current political climate have certainly been down. We continue to fund our capital projects through normal, over collecting and underspending our budget at year end. And then with our current enrollment today, the new governor's budget would provide Mount Lebanon with just over $150,000 in relief to charter schools. So hopefully that budget works and we get $250,000 increase from the state. So this is our worst case scenario for right now. This is the first true look with a variety of unknowns, including staffing and final figures from the state. And let's remember when we look at this that the board did appropriate $1 million in fund balance to balance the 19-20 budget. So essentially we started $1 million in the hole to start with. And you can see the use of fund balance at $750,000. That's what the board had used in years past before last year. I put that in the equation as I presented some plans that we'll talk about when we meet with the board members individually about phasing out the use of fund balance over the next 3 to 4 years, bringing our deficit to just under 2.8 million with a millage equivalent of 1.04. So the millage equivalent right there, 1.04, the board only has authority to raise taxes 0.64 mils. So we're looking for 0.4 mils, which is really like less than 1% of our budget, should we continue with this scenario. But again, this is just the early look on that.
So just a couple of
Sure.
quick things.
The formatting on that slide is a little different than what the board has.
Yeah,
so
that's, when
Well,
we transferred
They're
the
lined up a little
PowerPoint.
bit better.
No,
I know it's not
yeah,
that, but
no. I just want to point out that when we used the $1 million last year, we had a bunch of extenuating circumstances for this year that aren't occurring for next year. We had, we put the guidance counselors in every building, which I think was a huge positive for all of our kids. And I've been hearing great things about having the counselors in those buildings every day. And then there were some other budgetary things that did affect only last year and that are not going to affect the budget going forward.
Correct.
So that made the $1 million make more sense last year.
Certainly.
But that is certainly one area that the board needs to give the administration direction on is, how much of use of our fund balance does the board want to use to help offset tax increases? And you may decide, $2 million or whatever or zero. But that's really something that the board will have to discuss in public at the table in the future. But we're not quite ready for that. What we put in for right now is just $750,000 because we kind of rolled back one step to what it was in the past. But certainly that's an area that the board will need to discuss in the future.
Does anybody have any questions at this point? I know this is a lot of information for some of our
Still
new
got a
board
couple more
members.
slides.
But this is a lot of information so far, so I want to make sure that we're all good right now. Okay, thank you.
Again, we talk about the unknowns. We still have yet to complete our staffing, and there's a lot of ratios that we have to meet that kind of drive that. We're looking for approval from the legislature at the state level. And then our funding allocations federally, I believe were hold harmless, but I did receive notice this week that we'll be receiving $31 extra in Title II money, so $31.
And Title II is specific to
Usually
which one?
professional development for our
Okay.
teachers, yes.
So we can buy lunch for one more teacher?
We don't buy any food.
So here we are for next steps. So we know that preliminarily, we remain out of balance of $2.8 million or 1.04 mils. And we know that our index is 0.64. So obviously, the board approved back in January that we would not exceed that index. So that's where we're targeting to get down below that 0.64. So how do we do that? We reduced and refined our expenditures. So we'll be looking more closely at things like our utility costs and to make sure that our projections are good. Rob mentioned a couple areas where we were exceeding expectation in some of our revenues. We'll take a much closer look at those to see if we can refine those numbers. And as staffing becomes much more defined, we'll certainly be able to give better numbers because, as we said, almost more than 70% of our costs is with people. We'll also ask the board to consider use of fund balance. Last year, as I mentioned, $1 million was used to offset tax increases, so we put $750 in for right now just as a placeholder, but that is something that the board's going to have to carefully consider as we look to where the board does have fund balance to use. And consider, so you have two options, consider revenue increases or consider programmatic reductions. That's where you'll save money. So you either raise taxes or a combination of two. So that's typically where we'll go. Next week at the board meeting, you'll see a budget that the numbers are more refined, so we'll be able to drop that a little bit more below that 1.04 mils. But we'll tell you exactly what we did to get there. So it's just not a guessing game. So
Every year, we've started at this high number.
Yeah.
We started fairly similar last year, correct, Mr.
Certainly. I
Flecko?
think we were at 0.9 last year, so we're just 0.9 mils, so we're looking at 1.0.
And every year, by the time we have to vote in May, you have gotten it significantly down.
Well, the board gives us direction on.
Correct.
Which way they would like to go, so that's where we work.
Can I just clarify that the budget that we are, the very preliminary budget that we're
Yes.
looking at is holding taxes currently? Like, that's not anticipating any increased revenue?
So right now, when you look at if you look at the out of balance,
Yeah.
Increase taxes
this one
by
right here,
1.4.
so that
1.04.
102,426
Gotta
is
get
what
the
the
zero
revenue
back.
would look like without increasing taxes.
Okay.
That's correct.